Welcome to the Instructional Strategies webcast Part 2. This webcast is directed toward K-3 classroom teachers, intervention specialists, literacy coaches, and curriculum administrators. This is a two-part webcast series. Part 1 focused on foundational reading skills. In Part 1, we reviewed Ohio's learning standards for English language arts and literacy and how they supported the 5 critical components of reading, and we learned 5 evidence-based strategies for teaching the foundational reading skills of phonemic awareness, phonics, and fluency. This is Part 2 of the two-part webcast series. My name is Jessica Bennett, and I am from Battelle for Kids. I am a teacher-scientist who has spent the last 10 years teaching reading to students who are at risk for reading failure, teaching their teachers, and researching teaching methods that help such students catch up to their peers as quickly as possible. Just a few housekeeping items. Please submit any questions you have to the department. Remember, today's webcast will be available for replay, so you can watch it again or share it with a friend. Specific reference materials you may want to accompany this webcast will be available on the Ohio Department of Education's page for the 3rd grade reading guarantee. In this two-part series, you will have an opportunity to 1. Review Ohio's new learning standards for English language arts and literacy and how they support the 5 critical components of reading. 2. Learn a handful of evidence-based strategies for teaching literature and informational texts to students who are not on track. 3. Understand how to monitor progress and adapt instruction for each strategy. Part 2 of this Instructional Strategies webcast will focus on addressing the literature and informational text standards by learning specific vocabulary and comprehension instructional strategies. As mentioned in Part 1 of this webcast, the strategies presented in this text describe in detail what scientifically based reading research tells us works with struggling readers, and present a detailed and thorough review of the vocabulary and comprehension strategies seen in our standards. They are strategies that can be sprinkled into any existing curricula or program. Although many of these strategies are not new, they are tried and true when implemented with fidelity and paired with best fit practices, taking frequent progress monitoring data and adjusting your practice in order to promote growth based on student responding. Throughout this webcast series, I urge everyone to reflect on not only their practice, but also choices of products and programs in terms of what we know to be key elements of these intervention strategies. In Part 1 of this webcast series, we looked at the Literacy Instructional Toolkit Crosswalk and reviewed the critical components of reading and how they relate to Ohio's new learning standards for English language arts and literacy before examining 5 strategies that teach the foundational skills of reading. From here on out, when I say standards, please note that I am referring to Ohio's new learning standards for English language arts and literacy. Take a look at the crosswalk again and look for literature and informational text standards. We will now look at these 3 evidence-based strategies for teaching and monitoring the progress of vocabulary and comprehension of students who are not on track. There are 4 resources that can be used as reference. First, the Toolkit Crosswalk, located on page 25 of the toolkit. Second, Vertical Progression Guide. Third, the Academic Vocabulary Reference. Fourth, Comprehension Data Sheets. Notice the teacher tip. Now, let's look at an example of this in the standards. For example, Informational Text Standard 1, Grade 3 is, ask and answer questions such as who, what, where, when, why, and how to demonstrate understanding about key details in a text, referring explicitly to the text as a basis for the answers. To meet this standard, as well as standards 2 and 3, students need to know vocabulary, general academic and domain-specific words and phrases including interaction, key detail, main idea, quote, summary, and support. For the informational text, craft, and structure, Standard 4, emphasis is placed on the link between vocabulary and comprehension, and is apparent in the vertical progression from kindergarten through grade 5. In kindergarten and grade 1, the vocabulary and comprehension link is catalyzed by questions about words. The foundation for comprehension is laid when students, to quote the standard, with prompting and support, ask and answer questions to help determine or clarify the meaning of unknown words and then phrases in a text. In grades 2 through 5, students, again to quote the standard, determine the meaning of general academic and domain-specific words and phrases in a text relevant to a grade 2, 3, 4, or 5 level topic or subject area. To further understand and teach to this connection between vocabulary and comprehension, it is recommended that teachers deconstruct each standard as is done in FIP. So what intervention strategy addresses the vocabulary comprehension link? Semantic maps are one research-based and practice-proven tool. Learning to learn vocabulary words with semantic maps is a skill that can continue to serve a student well as he or she progresses through the grades K through 12 and beyond. The definition of semantic maps is shown here. Teachers help students form classification for words and also explicitly teach the target word through a variety of activities. Here is one example of a semantic map, also called a concept or mind map. The main concept is spiders. The category is defined arachnid. The attributes of spiders are listed, what they are like. Examples show what else belongs in the category. A teacher can provide direct instruction on how to construct a semantic map. Then, students can construct them with a teacher, in groups, and eventually individually. Teachers can provide students with templates. The ability to use a variety of tools to create these and to combine words with images and meaningful designs makes mapping a personalized, powerful, and low or no-cost tool. There are free digital applications and many examples on the internet. Students can collect semantic maps as their own dictionaries and use these as study guides. Semantic maps can function as both formative or summative assessment, and a comfort level with the technique can assist students when they participate in standardized testing that require constructed response. Both horizontal and vertical semantic maps can help students stretch or organize their vocabulary according to set parameters. Here is one example with Grade 3 English Language Arts domain-specific words collected on a vertical map. Students might be asked to complete the map with types of stories, or categorize the examples. The second example shows Grade 3 Social Studies words. Students could be presented a word bank and instructed to fill in the blanks from shortest to longest time. Here are the same English Language Arts words on a horizontal map and a new set of examples from Grade 3 Mathematics. Note that the class goes in the middle of the map. For the English Language Arts, students could be given a word bank and asked to sort them into subtypes of story. A sort could also be assigned for the mathematics example. Students could also be asked to justify their sorts. Both vertical and horizontal semantic maps are useful in progress monitoring. You can gauge student retention and understanding by analyzing their independent work samples. At Grade 3, Informational Text, Integration of Knowledge and Ideas, Standard 9, requires students to compare and contrast the most important points and key details presented in two texts on the same topic. On a Grade 3 practice test, the student is asked to read two related texts and then to compare and contrast key details about how endangered animals can be helped. Being prepared to use a semantic map strategy can help the student organize their thinking and respond. This is a strategy that can be used on paper or computer-based text. Remember, the academic vocabulary reference is a good place to find words for semantic maps. The next strategy to address vocabulary is text talk, which teaches vocabulary and context using definitions. Students actively process the meaning of each designated vocabulary word, including its connection to other words. Here is the instructional sequence for text talk. Notice the explicitness of instruction with modeling and explaining. Also note the importance of providing students with multiple examples of using the words in different contexts. It is also noteworthy that part of the sequence gives students the opportunity to practice using the word by making judgments about the examples and asking them to construct their own examples. Text talk can be multisensory as students see the word in print, hear the word, say the word, and practice decoding the word. This activity can bolster both oral vocabulary as well as reading vocabulary. Remember that, on average, students need to use a new word 6 times before they make it part of their working vocabulary. Students who are not on track may need even more repetition, such as 20 to 30 times. Here is an example script of how to use the instructional sequence to teach vocabulary directly using the target word feast. Teachers can monitor progress of vocabulary words learned throughout text talk by keeping charts of the words from several stories posted on the wall, place a tally mark next to the word if children hear or use one of the words, or attempt to use the words in regular classroom activities that occur each day. The next strategy we will address is the 4 types of questions and focuses on comprehension, which is the ultimate goal of reading. As we are aware, Ohio's learning standards for English language arts and literacy emphasize literal and inferential levels of understanding for both literature and informational texts. There is also emphasis on students accessing grade-level text and on complexity of text. Read the 4 steps of the 4 types of questions teaching procedure here. The think aloud strategy allows the teacher to model how to arrive at the answer by drawing attention to the clues in the text or background knowledge needed to answer the question. It can be used in modeling or as a scaffolded prompt when students are having difficulty answering a question on their own. The types of the 4 questions are shown in the left-hand column. The middle column determines whether the question type is literal or inferential. The right-hand column provides a definition of each question type. The on my own type of question is not in and of itself aligned with the standards, but it is a type of inferential question that gives the reader experience with connecting questions based on the text to their prior knowledge. Using this type of question could be used to help students who need more scaffolding in connecting what they read in the text to their prior knowledge, such as the think and search and author and me questions. Read this example passage. Here are example questions for that passage for each question type. On the left-hand column is the question. On the right, you can read how you would model and think aloud for students. Notice the teacher tip. Use the cards to help students identify what type of question they are trying to answer. Later, these cards can be used as prompts when you are correcting any errors. There are blank data sheets that you can use. The file is called Repeated Reading and Comprehension Data Sheets. This slide shows an example of a tutor using the data sheets for comprehension. Not all question types may be addressed when first teaching the strategies. Adjust instruction based on both accuracy and independence. Once students can independently answer a few of the question types with a high level of accuracy, 90% or above, either on practiced or cold reads, begin to work on the other types of questions. As we know from FIP, it is important for students to self-monitor and take ownership of their learning. This is a completed example of a student data sheet. Students will use % accuracy by question type to plot on a bar graph. Comprehension data in this bar graph indicates that this student needs to work on answering both literal and inferential, think and search, type of questions more accurately. The student's chart in the previous slide indicates that these data were taken on a cold read story, and that the student had help with the literal questions. This student would benefit from a combined repeated reading and comprehension activity such as reread, adapt, answer, comprehend. Once the student has a high percentage of accuracy and independence on practice passages, return to practicing the comprehension strategy on cold reads. Note the teacher tip. This strategy essentially combines repeated reading intervention with comprehension training. The data sheets provided can be useful for this combined strategy as well. Teaching students comprehension strategies can be done orally if students cannot independently read grade level and complex text. Deconstruct the standards and create learning targets to get struggling readers to go from reading simple texts to more complex texts independently. See FIP Your RIMPS on page 31 in the Literacy Instruction Toolkit. For screening and progress monitoring, maze and close curriculum-based measures can be used, as seen in AimsWeb or DIBELS, as can retells. Once you have determined that there is a comprehension problem, diagnostics can help you identify specific problems, such as accuracy, fluency, oral language, background knowledge, literal or inferential comprehension. Notice the teacher tip. Even if students are not reading on grade level, they can still build critical and analytical thinking skills through receptive and expressive language while you work on catching them up to reading grade level complex text independently through targeting the foundational skills. Incorporate each strategy into your existing curriculum and the daily, weekly routine by having clear learning targets, CFIP, and understanding your students' oral vocabulary and comprehension skills, as well as their ability to access complex text independently. Here is a list of resources used throughout this webcast and additional references that you may find useful. To get more professional assistance, there are many resources highlighted in the Literacy Instruction Toolkit and the Toolkit Instruction and Intervention Sampler. In addition, your local educational service center and state support teams and other experts in your community, such as local universities, may also be able to provide you with professional development opportunities. Transformational Literacy by Berger and Woodfin, 2014, is another handbook you might find useful. Here were our learning targets for Part 2 of this webcast. In Part 2 of this webcast, we learned a few strategies in the areas of vocabulary and comprehension to support the reading of literature and informational texts. We also discussed how progress monitoring should be used to adapt instruction. Don't forget, materials from this webcast are available via the department's website. Thank you for participating in Part 2 of the Instructional Strategies webcast. If you have any questions regarding the 5 critical components of reading, Ohio's learning standards for English language arts and literacy, the instructional strategies covered today, and/or progress monitoring, you can email them directly to the address on the screen.